ask you, give me just three words for sustainability, what would they be?
I think it is everybody's responsibility. All of us are in it. Second, I think it is a matter of survival for humanity now. The climate change and its impacts that is happening. And third is, I think we owe it to our future generation. So that's the bottom line.
Welcome to this episode of Sustainability Karma. I'm your host Naina Gautam, and today we have with us Tejashree Joshi. She is the head of Environmental Sustainability Godrej Enterprises Group. Welcome to the show, Tejashree.
Thanks for having me.
World Environment Day 2025 focuses on ending plastic pollution. Godrej is already plastic negative. How does it feel?
There are a lot of efforts that goes behind achieving these kind of milestones. It feels great, obviously, because somewhere, it's an indication of what you have been able to contribute. But at the same time, it also gives you a kind of responsibility that come whatever may, you need to keep sustaining the ambition and the intent of meeting those ambitions always. As much as we scale our businesses, we'll need to be conscious of our footprints on plastic, keep reducing that, and address the quantums which are anyways generated in a more responsible manner, so that we ensure that the plastics that we use don't end up in the environment as a waste. So, the whole concept of actually demonizing plastic shouldn't be the approach. It should be, it's a wonder material, but it is more of how do you actually more sustainably manage it and be responsible towards consumption. And that, I think, will go a long way worldwide to address this plastic menace. That's what is a fundamental belief that we have. And we intend to continue this journey, continue contributing, continue minimizing wasteful use of plastic, and do our bit in terms of remaining, recycling more plastic than we are putting in market.
The Good and Green initiative has been central to GEG's sustainability journey. How has it evolved and what are its focus areas nowadays?
As far as the Good and Green sustainability framework and journey for Godrej Enterprise Group, it started way back in 2010. For decades, we have been actually doing very meaningful work in the industrial sectors that we operate in on various aspects of sustainability. May it be pioneering green buildings in India. The first green building, the platinum rated green building in Hyderabad, was actually Godrej was an integral part of not only the design but the whole funding of making that building and demonstrating to the world that what could be the most greenest building at that point of time. But that's not it. It was just a beginning of a revolution of green buildings in the country. And today, India boasts of the second highest green building footprint in the world, just second to the United States, and probably in a couple of years we would overtake the United States on the footprint. So that's the journey. It's around 20-22 years. But the transition in the industry has on this has contributed immensely in terms of the built sector contribution in climate change. When you make green buildings, basically you're bringing down your operational carbon footprint in a big way, because your operations are becoming more and more efficient in terms of energy use. So that's one kind of a pioneering effort. That's not all. We have worked even in the appliances, consumer durable sector, consumer electronics sector, in terms of phasing out of ozone depleting substances from our refrigeration businesses. But when we did that, we just didn't look at the ozone depleting potential. We were very conscious of the global warming potential of the refrigerants as well. And in fact, we were the first company in India to transition from ozone depleting substance to a non-ODS plus a very low global warming potential refrigerant way back in 2000. So we have been doing this, but 2010 marked a year when we framed a specific program on sustainability called the Good and Green Framework, which talked about a specific target-based approach on each indicator that was material for our as an organization and our impact to work on. So we chose basically three pillars of prioritizing our interventions. One was, how do we make our own processes, our own establishments, our buildings, and our own footprints green in terms of energy efficiency, in terms of water efficiency, in terms of giving back more water than we are consuming, being water positive, diverting all the waste that are generated from our processes from going to landfill and for meaningful recycling, increasing our renewable energy share, and seeing that how does our overall operations become more responsible and green. But that was just one thing. More important was how do you mainstream sustainability as your business imperative?
Many organizations are setting ambitious sustainability targets. What, in your experience, are the key enablers and potential roadblocks for large scale operations to achieve significant environmental improvements?
I think roadblock probably is just the mindset. Frankly, it's not a one-day journey. It is a continuing journey. You need to be persistent, and the perseverance is the key to this. As sustainability is not a journey which ends in a day or a short-term journey. It's a continuous journey. Every time you keep doing something, there are ways to keep improving. So setting ambitious goals makes basically you to look at what is that destination that you want to reach, but more important is the journey that you are taking. Setting short-term, mid-term, and targets on these journeys very, very critical, and that's what we have done. While ultimately we have an aim, we had taken a target for the decade to have 50% of building in energy efficiency, water efficiency, achieving zero waste to landfill, and water positivity. And I'm very happy to say we have achieved all those growth targets. But then the program doesn't end. Now you start looking at what do you do next in the next decade. And that's where, now we have set our targets aligning with the net zero pathway that the world is taking. We have taken a target of improving our energy productivity by 60%. We have again taken a target of improving our water efficiencies, but this time not just fresh water, all the sources of water, including recycled water, because that's now a major component of our water footprint. What we did in the last decade to improve the quotient of recycled water use. Now we also want to bring in efficiencies in terms of use of recycled water, and in all applications. It could be the landscaping applications, cooling application, flushing, everything, each of them. So overall look at efficiencies and improvement. But importantly, now what we are trying to do is in this decade is shift the focus not just internally but to our supply chain. So far we did a lot of work on internally within the campuses to improve efficiencies. Now the focus is, while we do it, the ecosystem also should get to the same level that the organization is. And I think for large organizations, it is very important that they take this extended responsibility of their supply chains upgradation on the quotients of sustainability, because otherwise you are shrinking the responsibility and offloading your footprints. So now our focus is on supply chain. Our intent is at least 80% of our domestic purchase value over the next decade by FY32 should come from suppliers who are also onboarded on a similar sustainability journey as we have. And we are adopting a framework called as a Green Co framework, the Green Company framework for all our manufacturing activities and footprints. And we're also encouraging our suppliers to adopt the same framework, which looks at end-to-end greening of manufacturing and businesses and all components. I think really the roadblocks are in just thinking. I don't think companies should restrict their ambitions. There are ways to get there. Sometimes you may have a lean period and then you would improve. Policies also play a big role in that, and that there are supporting policies that evolve. But unless you set an ambitious target, you don't get that drive to move ahead and achieve those targets.
What role do data analytics play in driving environmental sustainability initiatives in large organizations? How do you measure success and demonstrate impact in this area?
Data is the foundation of really moving the needle on sustainability, because that really gives you a lot of insights. The analytics help you to understand the gap areas, and those hotspots where you can take action for meaningfully making a visible change on your sustainability quotient. So, digitization and along with the IoTs and Industry 4.0 and the whole technology of integrating your systems into giving you that data. And then there are systems which analyze that data and give you those dashboards to help you make inferences on your interventions, on the outputs of your interventions, and overall identifying the losses, overall identifying where are those areas where we need to address it. But what this does is gives you very quick visibility, and the loss time is reduced, and therefore the quick action that you can take goes a long way in actually saving a lot of resources. So data is a fundamental requirement of driving sustainability. Analytics plays a huge role in terms of giving you the insights, and managed sustainability managers can constantly and continuously keep improving their systems using this data analysis. And also it helps in cross deploying those kind of initiatives across your organizations or similar applications, which then is a multiplier effect in terms of the impact. And that's how I think we visualize that most of our energy systems are automized. We look at smart metering and giving that smart analysis of energy consumptions, so that we know the hotspots, we know the losses that are happening, what's happening during idle times, which are those excess operating areas that we need to cut down on, the efficiency of the machines, or is there a point where the machine has come for a breakdown or you need to replace, so that efficiency improves. So it's a continuous journey, and that's where the whole data and analytics and digitization is helping us. That's how we are doing it. And it's not only for energy. We are using the smart analytics for energy. We are using it for use of compressed air. We are using it for water and many other such applications, which gives us a lot of holding on the resource consumption that we are today doing and impacting, and how do we bring that down and bring in more efficiencies.
How is GEG aligning its ESG roadmap with India's climate targets and global frameworks like the UN SDGs or net zero pathways?
So when I was mentioning about our the next decade's target of GEG's target on good and green, while setting the target, we have looked at a science-based approach for decarbonization that aligns with the 1.5 degree decarbonization scenario. Ultimately, that will help us lead to net zero. But what I think we believe in is, declaring a net zero is very easy. It is more difficult to follow that path. And therefore, we have taken an approach of declaring an interim targets of for the financial year 32, which was a decade since when we set these targets. But those targets align to the 1.5 degree, which will ultimately take us to the net zero ambition. At that end of that decade, we will relook at how stringent we need to take the next targets while keeping the same vision of. But how it helps us basically is because then we also have the whole ecosystem aligning with our ambitions. If we have the government policy, say on EV or green transportation or energy transition, also support these initiatives, and then we can relook at our targets in a more ambitious manner for the next decade and actually pull back the year of net zero. So to do that, our overall target setting is aligned to the international standards or the SBTi science-based targets pathway. We have aligned to many international collaborative industry targets, the EP 100 or the Energy Productivity 100, which actually entails industries to double their energy productivity over a period of a decade or 15 years. And again, our target on energy productivity is aligned to the EP 100 commitment that we have made. We are part of the India Plastics Pact, which look at various aspects of plastic use in terms of reducing wasteful use of plastic, in terms of reducing, introducing more recyclable plastic, recycled content, and moving to ecologically friendly materials. So we have adapted those commitments. Likewise, we are also committed to net zero buildings. So there is a CII code for net zero buildings, and we have an MOU with the World Green Building Council to drive this net zero building concept in Asia Pacific region. While we have our own strategy, it doesn't lose the sight of the international commitments and where do we want to go ultimately as a world. So And if I mean, it's a no-brainer that all of these strategies basically align to the SDGs and the climate agreement, and we are in concurrence with that. And in fact, trying to do more in terms of how can we expedite or accelerate our ambitions on overall net zero.
Looking ahead, what emerging environmental trends or technologies do you believe will have the most transformative impact on how industries manage their environmental responsibilities?
I think the focus will have to come. I mean, energy is a very important sector. Transportation is another one, which will go a long way in addressing the decarbonization ambitions of the world. And I think battery storage is another. While we talk about renewables, the key is the storage, energy storage, and actual innovations in the storage, where it brings down fast charging, it brings down the cost of storage, will go a long way in terms of driving decarbonization, because transport sector is a big impact. So is more efficiencies in renewables, and again the storage becomes a very important aspect of that. But we cannot lose sight of the huge problem of waste today. And when you talk about waste, it is actually a resource misplaced, and therefore resource efficiency, I feel, is going to be the key, and should be the biggest game changer in terms of the whole sustainability scenario today. India as a country is a resource stressed country. We have large population, we have small land mass as compared to the population. And today, one of the reports on national resource policies actually pegged that our resource extraction is 3 times the world average. And therefore, we need to be cognizant of that and look into resource efficiencies in everything that we do. And circularity will help India to de-risk the dependence on very critical materials and resources, which can disrupt our growth ambitions. And so, material use, resource efficiency, waste management, and bringing that material back into use as a circular, driving the circularity concept overall in the economy, is going to play immensely important role with the kind of ambitions that we have for growth and what we want to achieve as an economy, but do it more responsibly, looking at the constraints. And in today's world, the kind of geopolitical scenarios we have, I think it is very important for Indian industry to de-risk itself from dependence on materials with the external, and be more and more self-sufficient. And that can only happen through the route of circularity and resource management through recycling.
For individuals or organizations who are about to start their environmental journey or enhance their environmental journey, what will be your top advice?
I think individual, it is basically, it is both very easy and difficult. You need to constantly have that mindset, but you can do very small things in terms of making those changes. Don't think of how big is that impact, because ultimately, every drop counts when it actually falls into the ocean, and that's how you build numbers. But whatever is in your capacity in terms of avoiding use of plastics, not littering, properly managing your waste, at least at your household levels, shutting off those taps, saving water, these are very, very small things. And wasteful use everywhere is going to accumulate and impact over the years. So making responsible choices is, I think, something which consumers can drive to even push businesses towards adopting more sustainable products or making more sustainable products. So I think as consumers, we should start becoming more aware of the labeling of the products and what are their declarations on particularly environmental aspects, and we should start looking at that and demanding more sustainable products. That will move the whole industry and the ecosystem to make more sustainable products, I think. And it will push the whole economy towards being more green. But as far as the organizations and companies are concerned, I think, if you're looking at sustainability, it's a very broad umbrella. You don't need to do everything at a go. And that can be very overwhelming for smaller companies especially. Look at what is material to you. Look at what you are really making a major impact on, and start with that area. Small steps lead to a big achievement, and identify those material areas where you are meaningfully should be making a difference, because you are highly dependent or impacting those areas. So it could be for certain industry, it could be high energy intensive business, so they should look at energy. Others could be they are on extractive materials, so look at the extractive materials and its impact. Don't go everywhere and start doing everything together. That then you may find it very hard and difficult to track and manage. take one step at a time. Start small, but as you move ahead and you build those capabilities, and you start identifying where you should be intervening, I think it then becomes, a synergetic journey, and you bring along your partners and allies in that. It starts multiplying. The effect starts multiplying, and that's how, whole movement starts. And I remember when we did the green buildings, initially the green buildings were, 20% more costlier than a normal building. But the way the ecosystem developed so quickly because of the demand and the consumer wanting to have these buildings, especially at least the commercial buildings, that the ecosystem moved so fast. And today you have so many options available for green products which should go in a building, that the cost of a green building is at par as in any other construction. At times it could be even cheaper. So that's how the whole ecosystem moves, and we've seen that happen in one sector. It can happen in all sectors. I firmly believe that. And as small suppliers, small vendors, you are catering to large businesses. Very, very important components of the entire supply chain. And, start small, take those baby steps, take those initial initiatives, and it will move on its own.
In a world flooded with greenwashing, how should policymakers and people genuinely identify sustainable efforts?
There are two things in this. There's an effort industries are taking, and it's also, discerning what do you declare. So, whole greenwashing comes from actually overcommitting or over declaring what you're actually achieving. And I know as a consumer, you may have those blind spots in terms of really knowing whether what a company is stating is true. But then there are third party assurances on declarations. So look at third party assurances where it's not only the company who's saying it, but there is a credible agency who has audited the systems of the organization and have then certified that yes, what claims the organization is making is true. One is that. Other, there are regulators now who are more and more mandating on these declarations. The BRS are reporting, the SEBI actually mandating for listed companies, and those are all audited submissions. Consumer is more and more aware, investors are more and more aware. They want to know that it is an authenticated performance that the company is putting out to. So responsibility on organization was always there, but it is the performance on responsibility is improving, I would say, because they know there are people today asking about whether the performance is true, and there are many scrutinies happening which are peer scrutinies. So if as a supplier I'm declaring something, the customer, a large scale company who is a customer to me, is also having a third party assessment and due diligence done for its own supply chain to look at the claims of the supply chain. So I think it is improving. The greenwashing is not going to sustain. It cannot take a company the way that it wants to go. It has to be more responsible reporting. I know it's always not so easy to discern between, whether it's a greenwashing or a actual commitment, but there are ways to do it. And if we actually, critically look at it, you can look at the reports, you can look at the sustainability reports, the audited reports, and find out whether organization is really doing anything on what they're stating to be done. Third-party assurances are one way of assuring that.
Looking ahead, what will be your message to younger generation of environmental stewards on this World Environment Day?
I think this generation is blessed with a huge advantage of having data and information at a click of their mobile phones. So be more aware about the choices you have. Be demanding in terms of what you want, and when you do that, you keep that constantly in your mind that what we are consuming is not just for us. It has to sustain over generations, and therefore we cannot be selfish in doing that. So being more conscious, being more having more information, and using that knowledge in a meaningful way in terms of driving the small changes you do as a consumer also will go a long way. But then there are many other avenues of contributing in terms of being volunteering for these causes. Looking at plastic. This year the theme is plastic, and plastic, I think there are numerous ways in which you can contribute as an individual, and it could be just simple as cleaning up your own premise of the littered plastic, because ultimately plastic lying there on the ground is at some point of time going to get into the soil, into microplastics, and ultimately ending up in our own bodies. So I think knowing that knowledge where it goes, where the material goes, is very important. Pollution basically transforms its form. it doesn't really go away, it enters into other forms of systems. Now, if there's higher concentration, it's pollution. Otherwise, it's material. Those materials have always been there. But if it's concentrated beyond the carrying capacity of the nature, it becomes a pollutant. Somewhere it comes and hits you back if you're not conscious about what you're letting out. So be conscious about what is happening when you throw a garbage bag into a garbage bin. It doesn't end there. Where it ends, you should be more aware of, and then you start making those conscious choices yourself. Associate with organizations who are working on these causes. There you can make more meaningful contributions in your society, in your particular area, in terms of cleanups, in terms of driving the awareness and change in the community, the behavioral change. And I think at school levels, imparting these conscious choices as a habit will go a long way in the generation.
Thank you, Tejashree, for such an insightful conversation.
Thank you.
This is Naina Gautam signing off for Sustainability Karma.
Hope you like this program. We look forward to your feedback on our WhatsApp number 9818120554. For participation in this program, write to us at sustainability.karma@gmail.com. Looking forward to meet you again at the same time next week with a new episode and a new guest. Till then, goodbye from all of us. Sustainability Karma, a podcast series on sustainable development, sustainability and ESG.